Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's good to be here today, and as we've heard earlier this morning, this is a bill that deals with the expansion of the CPP for Canadians, and this has been a long discussion. It's been something that's been discussed at the provincial level. There were other alternatives that were suggested by our government, and then when this government came in, they have been treating this as one of the primary pieces of legislation that they're interested in. I guess it really comes down to a debate between ideologies, Madam Speaker, between those who really see that the government should be the one that is managing Canadians, that they're managing taxpayers' money, that the government is one who has the capacity to force Canadians into limited options when it comes to their retirements, or those who believe that people should have the choice of how they're investing their retirement income, and that they should be able to manage their own money. And of course, on this side of the House, we believe that Canadians have enough of a sense of responsibility that they can manage that money. The Conservatives have taken a position over the years that we believe that people have that capacity, that ability to do that, and we've walked the walk. We've walked the walk both on our tax policies, we've walked it on our positions on pension reform as well. I'm just going to go through a few of the things that we've done in terms, when we were in government, in terms of tax benefits, just to point out that we've been consistent. We've increased the amount when we're in government that Canadians can earn tax-free. We believe that Canadians should be able to keep their money. They should be able to make those choices about how they want to spend that. Consistent with that, we cut the lowest personal income tax rate to 15%, giving particularly those who are low-income Canadians an opportunity to be tax-free. We've cut the GST from 7% to 5%. That's a tax cut that impacted everyone across this country. And my colleague from Saanich Gulf Island was just asking about seniors and whether they spend their money locally. And we believe they do spend their money locally, but certainly these tax cuts that our government provided to Canadians across the board made it more possible for seniors to be able to live out their lives with keeping more of their own money. We did things for families as well. The family tax cut was an important part of our government's policies, and we created and enhanced the monthly universal child care benefit. Now, there's a whole other section a whole other area of improvements that we made for pensioners and seniors as well. We did things like improve the rules for the registered retirement income funds to allow seniors to be able to change the way that they were removing their money from those investment funds. We increased the age credit amount by $2,000 and doubled to $2,000 the maximum amount of income that was eligible for the pension income credit. Introduced pension income splitting, which was a big deal for pensioners across the country. When we talked to Canadians about this, they were very thankful for that, and actually they wanted us to extend that to others as well, which we were doing. This government has decided that's not important to them. But I think the single most important thing that we probably introduced were the tax-free savings accounts, and it was interesting how quickly Canadians took to those. In fact, they were introduced in 2009-10 year, and by 2013, nearly 11 million individuals in Canada had a TFSA, and the total value of assets that were held in them at that time was nearly $20 billion. Now, Madam Speaker, I think that's a pretty significant initiative, and it's one that obviously Canadians welcomed. They were willing to put their money into it, and everywhere that I went, talking to people, they were very happy with that. It was individuals with annual incomes of less than $80,000 accounted for more than 80% of those accounts, and three-quarters of those assets by the end of 2013. So those were not, in spite of what the other parties have said about TFSAs, not just for wealthy people. There were a lot of people on lower incomes. There were a lot of seniors, actually, that were maxing out their TFSAs because they believed this was a very good retirement vehicle for them. So by the end of 2013, about 2 million people had contributed the maximum amount to their TFSAs, and 49% of those, 46% rather, of those individuals were seniors. So it's really interesting the reality of TFSAs compared to the illusion that the other parties were trying to create about them. And over 70% of those folks who had maxed out their TFSAs were over 55%. So if we're here to talk about seniors and protecting seniors, that was a real way to do that, and it was something that was going to be done in real time. The changes that we're talking about today that the Liberals are proposing are not going to impact those folks who are middle-aged or seniors. It's going to take decades for this supposed benefit that the Liberals are bringing in to really impact the people who are going to be taking advantage of those extra CPP benefits. You know, the number of other things that I mentioned, we did pension income splitting. We raised the pension income credit for older people as well. We raised the guaranteed income supplement so that pensioners could make up to $3,500 from that. And certainly that age-to-age limit on the RSP to RIF conversion was an important thing. That brings us today to this this bill, Bill C-26, is an omnibus piece of legislation that is going to implement an agreement that was reached in June 20th, 2016 between the provinces and the federal government. And Quebec, I guess we've noted before, does not participate directly in this, but they do have their own plan. As a result of this legislation, CPP premiums are going to rise for workers. They're going to rise for employers as well, and they're going to rise up to $2,200 per worker, which will be split between the workers and the employers. And obviously, that has an impact on employers and employers' capacity to hire workers as well. So there's going to be an impact there. The tax hike is going to take money right directly from the paychecks of hardworking Canadians, and we're talking here at least $100 a month, and that would probably increase as time goes on. It puts thousands of jobs at risk. We've had discussions on another area, especially in the provinces, which is the raising of minimum wages and the threat that puts onto low-income jobs. Well, this is just one more of those threats that employers have to deal with in trying to hire people, trying to keep them at work. And certainly this isn't a time in Canada when we should be deliberately putting jobs at risk, because this isn't a strong, stable economy that we're dealing with right now. It certainly isn't the economy that we had 2 years ago in Canada. And it's unfortunate because it seems like every choice that this government is making puts Canadians more and more at risk, and their jobs more and more at risk as well. So if households are going to have to pay up to $2,200 per year out of their salaries, it means it's obviously things like graduate students or students in post-secondary education are going to have a much more difficult time to pay off their student loans. Families will have a challenge even on things like vacations, going and just enjoying themselves together. They probably have a harder time funding that post-secondary education that their children are going to be taking up as well. And certainly, as we mentioned, it'll be harder for companies to create the jobs and give workers raises. And it's interesting, 70% of small and medium-sized enterprises see this as a significant impact on their business. So people are paying attention to it, and the ones that are understand that this does have an impact on them. And 90% of those small business owners say they would certainly like to be consulted more by this government. They don't feel like they've had a chance to have their say. They don't feel like they've been listened to. And that seems to be a topic I'm hearing across this country, that this government just is not capable of listening to people in spite of the multi-million consultations that they seem to be having across the country. It doesn't seem like they're talking to the average Canadian, because average Canadians certainly don't feel like they're being heard. This is just one more issue where that shows its face. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, this is going to take 40 years to be fully implemented. So none of the new benefits at all will be going to the seniors, people who are presently seniors. And in our question and answer questions we've heard, the questions focus on present-day seniors and whether they're low income or they've got medium incomes or whatever. But the reality is these changes that we're talking about in Bill C-26 have nothing to do with people who are seniors right now, because they will not experience any of the benefits from them. That is quite a contrast, as I pointed out, to the tax-free savings accounts and the fact that people were able to manage their own money, put them into those vehicles, they're able to invest them as they choose, and then they were able to benefit from that. We believe that our system has been the envy of people around the world. One of the reasons people have been envious of it is because there has been some choice within that system. And we believe on this side of the House that does not hurt Canadians to have more choice, that because they are saving more for retirement than they ever have before, that it really is necessary that they do have those choices. And I'm sorry to see, Madam Speaker, that my time is already winding up, but we're just concerned. This bill that the Liberals are introducing and pushing through here, we know it will reduce employment, we know it will impact GDP, we know that it's going to reduce business investment, it's going to reduce disposable income for Canadians, and over the long run, it's predicted that it will reduce private savings by up to 7%. So we just think it's unfortunate that this means that more money is going to be taken from the pockets of Canadian workers. That obviously affects them directly. It will put jobs at jeopardy, and it will do nothing to impact today's seniors because it's going to take 40 years for it to be fully implemented.
And comments, questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, listening to Conservative after Conservative after Conservative speak on this piece of legislation, I begin to better understand why Stephen Harper and the Conservative government resisted at all costs whenever a province or a Canadian raised the issue of the importance of the CPP. Madam Speaker, the Conservative Party has indeed lost touch with what Canadians really value. The CPP is one of those fundamental social programs that Canadians truly believe in. Only the Conservative Party, as a political entity, seems to oppose the CPP. My question to the Conservative Party and to the member is, would the member kindly explain to Canadians why it is that the Conservatives continue to resist any progressive move towards enhancing the CPP, especially when you get provinces from all regions of the country saying this is good legislation? Why are the Conservatives standing alone?
I just want to remind the members that when someone is speaking, we allow them that respect that we would want for ourselves when we are speaking in the House. The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, Madam Speaker, fortunately for the member opposite, he doesn't usually have to worry about people interrupting him because it seems like the higher the volume and the more the hyperbole he goes into, the more accurate he thinks he is. And obviously nobody in this House opposes the CPP. That's just ridiculous. And if he's going to take that kind of position, then he ends up getting in a situation where people don't actually treat what he has to say seriously. So he needs to consider that. This is exaggerated rhetoric, doesn't do anything, but the reality is the changes that the Liberals are making do not affect our seniors, the people who are seniors right now. They stand over there and they say, we're concerned about seniors, we want to have some impact on seniors. Things like the tax-free savings accounts, the choices that we were giving them actually did have an impact for them, and they were very happy to have that. They have rolled that back. They've cut the limits back to half, and certainly we support CPP. There was never a move to do anything negatively to CPP. We just believe that Canadians need as many options as they can have for their retirement savings.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to remind the members here as well that we don't chastise other members because of their passion when they're asking questions either. So questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for his speech. Madam Speaker, he has mentioned, the member has mentioned about the actual cost that it talks about small and medium-sized business that it's going to introduce. And he mentions that it's about $2,200, if I understood him correctly. That's the maximum contribution, and that is to get the maximum benefit. But most of those small and medium-sized businesses do not pay that type of money that would actually cost them that type of maximum premium. Okay. So can I ask the member, has he done a cost analysis of what the average price would be, the average cost to the small and medium-sized business, instead of exaggerating about what the maximum is going to be? Thank you.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, it's unfortunate he's chastising me. I wasn't exaggerating anything because the reality is that the pensionable earnings are set at 9.9% of an employee's levels right now, and they're going to go to 12%. So he's right. The maximum is that it's going to go $2,200 is the maximum. But the reality is every single employee in this country is going to pay more because of this legislation. Every single employer in this country is going to pay more because of this change in CPP. So we believe that that's not a good choice for Canadians to be making, that they should have some other choices that they can do. And we know that we're at odds with this government because they believe that they can help dictate to Canadians what it is that they think is best for them. We believe people are best making their own choices, managing their own money, and that they will best save for their own retirements when they do that.
We have time for a very brief question. Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for, for Chilliwack Hope.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to ask the member, one of the concerns that I've had expressed to me from my constituents is that while the government is taking away an additional $1,000 or $2,200 when you factor in the employer contribution and supposedly setting it aside for retirement, if an individual passes away, before they're able to access that benefit. That money does not get passed on to their heirs. It's just simply been an additional $1,000 a year taken away from them. So I want to talk about, can you contrast that to some of the other retirement savings vehicles and how this will eliminate the ability for some Canadians to save and not be able to pass that?
The member for Cypress Hills Grassland, a very, very brief answer, please.
Well, certainly, Madam Speaker, we believe that it's important that families can support each other in their retirement incomes or retirement savings, and so we believe in those vehicles that allow people to do that. It's obvious the other side has a real problem with that.
Resuming debate.